All right, we're live. I'm here with Mr. Luke Close, of course, predictably, because it's a Tuesday. What else would we be doing on Tuesday night but talking about college football? And we have a lot to get to. We have a lot of grounds to cover tonight. This was probably the craziest weekend that I saw in college football since Veterans Day in 2016. Of course, that was the weekend where Michigan fell to Iowa, Washington fell to USC,
Mm-hmm.
and Clemson felt the Pitt at home. This is
Yeah.
by far the craziest college football weekend that I've seen since then. There's lots to unpack. I don't think any of those teams are out of the running for good. I think that there's still a lot of meat on the bone for all those that fell this weekend, which we'll get into that. But we're gonna let's unpack it because Luke, you were in Nashville for this.
Yeah, I was a little bit regrettably, but I mean it was a fun trip overall until the game happened. But I'll say one thing about the game itself. The stadium was about 80% Alabama fans, maybe even a little bit more, but the Vandy fans were louder than the Alabama fans, and it seems like the team kind of picked up that same energy that the fan base had. Um, I think that we kind of hit it on the head the week before after talking about the Georgia game when it comes down to the Alabama defense and the same problems that we saw against Georgia that we kind of just brushed under the rug because it was a big win and, ultimately you got the result. That Vandy team was good. They pushed Missouri to the brink and they really picked apart Alabama's defense all day on Saturday. Just no stops, 43 minutes of time of possession. Just a lot of things that went wrong, missed coverages. Pavia, man, he's a player. I mean, he is really a player. I mean, all credit to him. All credit to Vanderbilt. That's the biggest win in program history by far. I'll say I'm a big Clark Lee fan in general. I have been. I believed in him and the way I've seen steady improvements in Vanderbilt. But yeah, just not great from the Alabama defense. Couldn't get off the field on third down. The week before it was fourth down. And if those problems continue to persist, it's going to be a long year for Alabama, and they gotta fix it up quick because you got South Carolina coming in, and then you got the money weeks. You got Tennessee, you got Missouri, you got LSU, and that 3 weeks is going to determine the season. And every good thing that you just built up from the Georgia weekend, you have just pissed away down the toilet with that Vanderbilt loss. So it's right back to square one.
Oh yeah, I mean rent is due every week. I can't stress that enough. Like what you did last week doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the magnitude of the game that you won, you have to go preparing and get ready for the following week. And that Georgia game, I think we talked about a little bit last week. It was an enthralling victory, but sometimes that despite the emotions that were felt after that game and what it meant to the times, it's better off to feel the sting of defeat.
Yeah.
It honestly is sometimes because you can come close to losing and then you pull it off. You don't really learn anything from that.
Right.
Sometimes you have to actually experience because that sting of defeat. There's nothing like it. Especially losing a game where you were a 23-point favorite. There's nothing like that sting of defeat. And so I think there's a lot of lessons that to be learned by that Alabama team, both on the field and mentally. And they learned it this week. There's no other way I can put it. And hindsight is a crazy thing, but when you look at it now, it makes sense. You had a game getting played at 4:15 Eastern, 3:15 Central, just oddball scheduling.
Yeah.
You're on SEC Network. Nobody's really talking about it. I mean, half the world forgot Bama was even playing on Saturday. You're so lost and engrossed in what happened the week before.
Yeah.
Apparently, so was Alabama's football team, engrossed in what happened the week before, and could not detach from that Georgia game and pay rent once again the following week. And it's to be that consistency again. That consistency that's going to determine how this Bama team is going to perform and fare this year. And again, I'm not going to panic because it's a very fast moving sport. Again,
a long season.
On top of the world, like look at Alabama, they're on top of the world last weekend. This week, they're the butt of the joke. Look at Notre Dame. They scored 14 points at home against Northern Illinois. Now they're back to the playoff conversation, like nothing ever happened. You beat South Carolina, you beat Tennessee, you beat Missouri, and October off on that note, and all of a sudden, all is well.
Well, I'll say this too. You could just kind of tell. There's three things specifically I really noticed about the game, and it kind of worried me a little bit because I was actually at the 2014 Ole Miss game when Bo Wallace beat Alabama, and it was just kind of like another one of those odd games. Now that was a little bit more hyped up because Ole Miss was a little bit more respectable. No offense to Vandy, but it's the truth. To start the game, Vandy ran out of the locker room, and you could just see all the energy. And Alabama was over there huddled by the locker room, and Vanderbilt went over there and ran and sat next to the players and actually held up the players a little bit from their normal running out of the normal like schedule of running out of the locker room. And I kind of looked. I was there with my dad. Kind of looked at him, and I was like, they're either playing with fire here or they're really showing something. And you could just see right there that they were ready to go from the jump. The second thing is there's always one of those plays that you see early in the game against Alabama that really makes you kind of question where their heads are at. And there was two of them in that game. First was the pick six on Alabama's opening drive. At that point, you're like, all right, Alabama's still going to come back and win, but that's a little bit worrying. And I think that the biggest, maybe most overlooked play, which I think really showed where Alabama's headspace was at, was the punt where Alabama had two number twos on the field, and it resulted in a 5-yard penalty for Vanderbilt and an automatic first down, and Vanderbilt went on and scored on that drive. You look back at the final score, Alabama loses by 5 points. That's a 7-point difference right there. So it's just sloppy, and it's almost like you said, it's a 3-15 game. They just didn't get up for their opponent. They didn't respect their opponent. But like you said, again, long season, 12-team playoff. I think we mentioned it earlier on the brief little podcast we had in June or July. Said the 12-team playoff isn't a sprint; it's a marathon. So you just got to take it and learn from it. And you're not always going to go through the season perfect. And as long as you retain your confidence level and your mentals, and you get back next week and have a strong showing against South Carolina, people might forget about it unless you're from Nashville and have been a Vandy fan your whole life.
Well, and you're also, what I think is interesting about this year in particular is you're getting all these matchups that you never really got in the past. Like, I think so many of these teams, everyone included, where you had that structured conference schedule.
Yeah.
And these are the 7 teams you're playing every year in your conference, and it never changes. Like Alabama, you looked at every year, you're going to see Ole Miss, you're going to see Mississippi State, you're going to see Arkansas, you're going to see A&M, you're going to see Auburn, you're going to see Tennessee, you're going to see LSU.
Yeah,
you had every year, who you're going to see. That's out the window. And same goes for Tennessee. You knew you were going to see Florida. You knew you were going to see Georgia. You were going to see Missouri. You're going to see Vandy. You're going to see Kentucky. It was South Carolina. It's to be expected. Now, but both of those. That was interesting. The interesting thing that I noticed about both the upsets this weekend was both of them were games that in the past would have been interdivision games in the SEC, West against East. Tennessee never plays Arkansas. When they do, it doesn't usually fare well. But they never play Arkansas. Alabama never plays Vanderbilt. It usually goes in Alabama's favor, but they don't really see each other much.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see these teams for a couple of years. You don't really understand their schemes, and especially Alabama hit a real iceberg with Vandy because there's this connotation on Vanderbilt. Oh, it's just Vanderbilt. Oh, it's just Vanderbilt. I don't want to hear that bullshit anymore because Clark Lee is a great – it's time to respect this team. Clark Lee is a great head coach. Diego Pavia is a dynamic quarterback.
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel there, but a very dynamic quarterback. And, I think Alabama's expecting 2022 Vanderbilt like they saw last time they played, and that's just not the case.
No, not at all.
And Tennessee, it was a while since they've been to Donald W. Reynolds Stadium, and they called the Hogs, and it worked that night. And so it's all these different matchups that you're just not used to seeing, and these squads are not used to seeing them. And that's why this year it's just going to be interesting because it's a longer season. You have all these odd matchups you never see. You're going to see. This is just the very beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg. Like you're going to see more and more of these upsets each and every single week. I think there's more coming this weekend. It's going to be fascinating.
I agree. Speaking of Tennessee, just like Alabama, I think we nailed it right on the head with Tennessee yet, how you can't just go ahead and crown them into the playoffs because, they struggled against Oklahoma and they got the win. So everybody kind of threw it out and they're like, maybe they were kind of playing them a little soft because Heupel, quarterback at Oklahoma, OC had a little bit of love there. But those struggles, they were lucky to be down 3-0 at the half, to being honest. I think at halftime they had under 100 yards of total offense. And so Arkansas was just dominating the game like Arkansas has been, which is very impressive. I did not see that coming, but they have been dominating the game against Auburn. I thought they really dominated against Oklahoma State outside of one quarter. And I guess they played A&M a little bit more back and forth, but Arkansas has been good all year. And Tennessee, it kind of looked like they tucked their tail between their legs, and they were all out of sorts. Going to the last play where Nico ran the ball out of bounds and didn't even get a shot to the end zone. It just seemed like they were stuck in the mud all night. And credit to Sam Pittman. I did not believe in Pittman. I didn't think he was going to be here after the end of the season, but he's starting to put together a couple good runs. And Arkansas, they're not out of the conversation yet either. Now, will they be there? Probably not. But starting off the year well it bodes well for Arkansas in the future. And Tennessee, this Alabama-Tennessee game is just it's going to be a war of attrition at this point because it's going to be an angry game.
Yeah, you factor the rivalry into it, of course, but both of these teams cannot afford to lose this game.
Yeah,
this may be the highest pressure Alabama-Tennessee game we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because even back in 2022 when Tennessee won, Alabama could still afford to lose that game. Tennessee could still afford to lose it. They're both undefeated.
Yeah.
Whoever lost that game was still going to be okay. This one, granted, I think a 3-loss or a 2-loss SEC team could still get in.
You got to run the table, though.
But you got to run the table. Whoever loses that game is going to have to pretty much win out.
Yeah, I agree.
And which is, like we said, harder now with these revamped schedules to do than ever before. And it's the Tennessee, Arkansas, and the Alabama-Vanderbilt games. They both mirror each other so much because we were so quick to crown both of these two teams. After Tennessee, after the Oklahoma win, Alabama over the Georgia win, we were so quick to christen these teams as, oh my God, these are two of the best teams in the nation. Are they really?
Yeah.
Do we know that?
No.
There were both obvious flaws in both those games. Tennessee's offense, and a lot of us are sitting here, man, this offense is dynamic. This offense is explosive. Really, it's easy. It's easy to ball out when you're playing Kent State
and NC State,
Oklahoma, and they struggled all night to move the ball downfield against Oklahoma. Alabama couldn't stop a nosebleed against Georgia in the second half. These are teams with big concerns about them. And it's not just those. I'm not just banging down on those two. Georgia's got concerns. We haven't seen Ohio State or Texas. Texas beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Goes to Washington. So what is that? What is that really? If you have any kind of a passing game against Michigan, you're going to win.
Right.
And Ohio State beat Iowa, who is offenseless.
Yeah, you could have seen 35-7 coming from a mile away.
Come on, what do you want from me? So those teams have done what they need to do so far, but and by default you're going to put them at number 1, number 2, and Oregon at number 3. I have no issue with that.
Neither do I.
But none of those three have been tested yet, and so technically Oregon was against Boise State, but it's going to come. All three of them, their day is going to come. And I'm not trying to sound like a pundit or sound negative. It's just the way this year is going to be. They're going to get their L.
It's going to be. You're going to be hard pressed to find, and you're going to be hard pressed to find a team that goes undefeated in this new era. I mean, if they do, they're going to be up there for greatest college football teams of all time. And you never want to lose, but sometimes it's better to lose early than late, is what they say. But yeah, we've seen nothing from Texas. We've seen nothing from Ohio State. I mean, they've cakewalked their way. Now they do have some tough games coming up that are really going to put some pressure on them. Oregon, not sold on them, and then Penn State. I'm definitely not sold on Penn State. I'm never sold on Penn State. They got their home game. The home atmosphere is always good, but they're due to lose a couple.
And the thing with them, like if you watch their games, like I've tuned in for a couple of them. Like I really watched the West Virginia one closely.
Yeah.
I had the Bowling Green one on for a while, believe it or not, just because it was close. I was like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
I had their game on against UCLA for a while this weekend, and I feel like they just they can't ever really get into like a consistent rhythm on offense. Like you'll see these big pop plays, these explosive plays, but they remind me a lot of Tennessee.
Yeah,
there's never really a consistent rhythm. And in Oregon, so many times, and I'm making my Oregon Ohio State prediction. Be a referee get off here. Oregon, they start slow a lot, and they turn the ball over in the red zone a lot.
Yeah, that is a huge problem too.
So there's a lot of concerns and we haven't really like Texas and Ohio State's concerns haven't really been exposed just yet, but they're going to be. Then they have them. We don't know what they are yet, but they're going to be exposed.
Yeah, I mean in Texas, both those teams are playing high level games this week. I mean Oklahoma and Oregon. As beaten up as Oklahoma is, they're going to come ready to play, and they're whatever flaws you have on offense, this Oklahoma team is going to expose them. And Oregon and Ohio State, that's just a powerhouse matchup. You can't get much better than that. We've seen a couple games from Oregon where they look shaky. I didn't think they looked particularly great against Michigan State. That's a game where you look back on it and you're like, Oregon should have won that game by 50. And Ohio State, I'm not even gonna lie. I've tuned into like a couple plays when they play at 11 a.m. But I'm not ever excited to turn on the Ohio State Iowa game or the Ohio State Kent State game, and I don't think many people are unless you live in Columbus, Ohio. But it's the thing about this sport is what makes it so compelling and so amazing is that you don't know anything until the game is played on the field. Everything that you think you know about college football, the week after, you're like, man, I was really wrong about that, and that's what makes it so great.
Oh yeah, go on. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was gonna say especially around like this time of year, like we're still very much in that learning phase.
Oh yeah,
right. So many of these teams out here, we don't really know who they are. Like it is easier to predict games in November. Like I found that doing the prediction videos last year, it's easier to put predictions together late in November because we have such a profile on all these teams. But we still have a very developing profile.
Yeah.
Again, I have nothing to really say about Texas or Ohio State. Like right. I was putting my Ohio State Oregon prediction together last night. And I'm kind of what do I even say about these guys? Like I don't. They have a talented roster. They have a deep roster. They're great in the trenches.
Yeah.
Outside of that, like, what do I really?
You don't really have any. You don't have any base material.
It's like we're gonna learn. School be in session on Saturday. Yeah, be there, be square 6:30 Central, and just watch it all unfold. But it's and this year in particular, it's gonna be harder to get a pulse on teams with the new layout of these seasons. Because I like to make the comparison here of it's kind of saw it when the NFL's schedule expanded.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
This reminds me of this. It's almost like taking the Regents exam in New York compared to the AP exam. Like the Regents exam is like you can get I got a lot of 97s and 98s on those. Like it's if you prepare well to go through the study guides and stuff, you'll be good. Like perfect seasons were normal. Like we've had so many years with their the BCS and the 14 playoff where 3 of the 4 teams were undefeated. Like we've had that. It's like almost borderline expected to be undefeated if you're a powerhouse. Whereas now it's kind of like the AP exam where if you get an 89 or a 91, you did pretty good.
Yeah.
If you have a 1-loss season, that's damn good. If you have a 2-loss season, that'll get you in.
Yeah.
It's totally different now.
Well, and I think, we harp on this every week, but that's just what the transfer portal is going to do. And the talent is so spread out. Like 3 years ago, Vanderbilt would never have Diego Pavia at quarterback. But just the way college football is just changing is just it really does remind me of the NFL in a way, like to where you look at the scores and you're like, this team lost it. This team struggled with them. This team lost to them. And just real quick on the transfer portal note, I want to hear your opinion on all these players. Like we're starting to see it almost be like a norm of them opting out during the season. I cannot stand it. I hope the NCAA puts a regulation on it. It needs to be done this year in the off season because players should not be able to redshirt and opt out in the middle of the year and quit on a team. And you should not be rewarded for quitting on a team.
You ready? You ready to hear a rant?
Yeah.
Because I actually, like when I was getting ready for work this morning, I'll often have conversations with myself, and I'm just I want a full on tirade about this morning. I got pissed off. I got fired up before I went to work about this because I was just thinking about the stuff that's happened the past couple of weeks with the transfer portal, and here's what I have to say about it. And I'm probably gonna make like a short or something about this at some point because I just think this has to be said. I am so tired of instant gratification, and that's all of this this transfer portal is going to enable players the ability to do is just extrapolate more and more on instant gratification. There's something special to be said about committing to a program when you're 17 and sticking it out. I can go through the names of players at Bama and Ohio State and USC and Notre Dame and Clemson and Georgia who did this and are basking in these fruitful NFL careers because they did the thing, and they're prepared for the next level because they endured every phase of growth. When you're third on the depth chart, that's humbling. Especially when you go somewhere like I like to take Najee Harris. Najee Harris is my favorite example for this. You go to Alabama and you're third on the depth chart. And I think he was actually fourth at one point.
Yeah.
I believe in another running back in there at some point who transferred. But you had Bo Scarborough and Damian Harris. And I think somebody else at one point.
Maybe Jacobs.
It was Josh Jacobs. It was Josh Jacobs. It was Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
And then Najee Harris. And you're seeing these three just studs sitting in front of you. You're Najee Harris, who's very talented, amazing work ethic. But you're like, how the hell am I ever going to see the light of day? It's so easy. Like you've got third-party external factors in your ear now. You've got agents. You've got collectives. Oh, come here. We'll give you this here. We'll give you $3 million to come here. You can play immediately if you come here. Grow where you're planted. There's nothing like reaping the rewards of growing where you're planted and sticking through the process of being fourth in the depth chart. And Tom Brady said this all the time. Winning every practice, getting 1% better every day. You win every practice. That's how you move up. And then guess what? Damian Harris is going to get drafted. Bo Scarborough is going to get drafted. Josh Jacobs is going to get drafted. Then guess who's going to be next to come? Najee Harris. It's going to be your time at some point. You're going to get your opportunity. It may not be when you're a sophomore, and you're probably not ready to be a starting running back in the SEC when you're a sophomore. Because you're just going to get your confidence killed. You're going to get smashed.
Yeah.
Hit the weight room more. Continue to build your skills, build your technique.
And learn.
Come in that third or fourth year, and be a stud. All it took for Mac Jones to get drafted in the first round was to have a great year. That's all it took. And then your body's not as beat up. Stick through the process. You're going to reap the rewards. You're going to build relationships. They're going to last a lifetime. And you're going to understand what it takes to work through adversity. And
Well,
that's where it's at with these players now. And that's fading away. And I hate that.
well, and real quick, I mean, I just a little comparison I'd like to compare it to. I always feel like it's better for a quarterback who gets drafted into the NFL to sit behind a veteran for at least half a season and learn the offense and learn how to be a professional before he just gets thrown into the fire. I feel like the success rate is there more. You see it with Jordan Love, who sat there for multiple years. Now he's really blossomed into a good NFL quarterback. But yeah, completely agree with everything you're saying. You can't reward people for quitting. It's what you're doing. When you leave a team midway through the season, you quit. 10 years ago, you quit on a team no program is offering you. You're going to JUCO or you're going to community college. Now you're going to a Power 4 school. So yeah, it's just ridiculous. But I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
And that's it. And like, I'm sorry if I'm in that locker room and you make that decision to jump in the portal and turn on us, get out. Get out. Take your shit out of the locker and get out. We're done. Yeah, you and don't ever come back.
Leave your shit.
Get out.
Yeah.
Never want to see you again. And that team component is so important. And I don't want to see it lost. And long term, I don't think it will be lost because you're going to learn from these guys that are jumping in the portal. Because I've even seen it. How like just think about there's a few success stories. And I'd like to get like a statistical rundown on this at some point. But I'd like to know in these past 3 years, how many of these guys were actually better when they jumped in the portal and went somewhere else. Because you'll get some stories like you'll get the Cam Ward stories.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. But there's been so many guys that transfer to different teams and just peter out. And I think you're seeing more of that than the success stories.
I agree.
And it'll eventually be learned that it's better to grow where you're planted. But it's just going to take time of seeing it play over and over again.
I agree. Well, let's get some predictions for this weekend. Some talk about teams of the week. What you want to start with?
So you mentioned Oregon and Ohio State, and I'm going to hold off on that one because I'm actually about to make that video once I jump off with you. You want to talk about Ole Miss and LSU?
I'd love to. I've been thinking about this one. I think this is one of the games that's really flying under the radar this week just because both teams have a loss. And, you got Oregon, Ohio State. Everybody's talking about Oklahoma, Texas. Man, this one is a coin flip to me. I don't know what team is going to show up where, what components of the team are going to show up where. My heart tells me to lean towards Ole Miss, but my brain is telling me that LSU is just the better team and that I think that they're tougher. And like we mentioned about Ole Miss earlier in the year, delivering in the big moment has always been a problem for the Ole Miss administration. And like they against Kentucky, they didn't hit their spots. They go on the road, they have a dominant effort against South Carolina. I'm going to go LSU. I think LSU is going to pull this one off.
I'm actually having the same debacle as you. Because in all these past years, it's always LSU that pulls a game like this off.
Yeah.
And LSU is really good at responding when their back is up against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
They get themselves into unfavorable situations, but then there's always just this level of fight within this team that gets them back on their feet. And I just feel like this is especially being in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
This is a situation where a game like that would happen. But it's also I also feel like that Kentucky loss was startling enough to Ole Miss. And they're good enough. They're talented enough to where I think they're more talented than LSU right now.
I agree.
And I think I give a slight edge to Ole Miss.
All
but
right.
If it's one of those, like my confidence level is like a 0.25.
Yeah, it's one of those where on the college football pick'em you put it at the 1.
Yeah, like I put this one low.
Yeah.
There's a few that I'm more confident in this weekend. This is not one of them. But to end it off here, we're getting close to half an hour. I'm not going to give my pick, but I'm going to ask you yours for OU Texas because I'm genuinely in a debacle right now. I have to make a video about this. I'm genuinely in a debacle, and I want to see where your head's at with it.
This was the game I was hoping you wouldn't ask me because I am just so torn over this. On one side of the coin, C.J. Baxter's hurt, and Oklahoma's been able to hold teams that are one-dimensional to low amounts to low scoring, and I think Oklahoma can win a low-scoring game against Texas. Ultimately, I think Texas makes enough plays to get it done, especially with it being a get-back game after last year, where Texas came in with all the hype and Oklahoma stunned them. Man, I'm leaning towards Texas. I think Texas gets it done, not in a definitive fashion, but I think they ultimately get it done.
I've got some thoughts about that game. That's all I'm going to say is I've got some thoughts about that game brewing, and I'm saving that video to make for tomorrow night
because I love Hawkins.
I have to sleep on it one more night. Like I'm not ready to make a decision yet.
I really like Michael Hawkins, but I think that this is one of those games for me where it's like don't overthink it. Just it's going to be Texas. I think Texas is going to get it done.
I'm going to sleep on it. I'm going to go back and forth tonight, and I'll make my video tomorrow night and release it. That's it. I'm really going back and forth on that one. It's going to be a game time decision. Who's your team of the week this week, Luke?
So obviously the obvious ones would be Vandy and Arkansas, but since we've already mentioned them a lot, I'm going to go kind of out of the box on this one. We've looked at a bunch of teams previously that have been flying under the radar and not been great in previous years that are having good seasons. I'm actually going to give my team of the week to Miami. I think they got away with it a little bit. I think I personally myself, I thought it was targeting. I don't even know what targeting it is anymore after Saturday, but I'm Miami. This is a program that in years past you see them just fold time after time after time again. I thought it was going to happen against Virginia Tech. I thought it was going to happen against Cal. And this team, something about this team, they just got some fight in them. And I think that one of the biggest things of the game, one of the biggest points of the game that I think kind of went under the radar was actually a coaching decision by Cristobal. I'm always a huge advocate of going for two if you're down by a lot, because what do you have to lose? Unless it just mathematically makes no sense. And going for two won them the game. So I'm going to give them, and just a brief shout out to Minnesota.
I was going to glaze on Minnesota too. So I'm glad you did. Big win for the Golden Gophers over USC. I love to see it. Love that program with PJ Fleck is doing up there. A lot of momentum behind it. For my team of the week, I'm going to go with the team that's about 10 minutes from my house here, SMU.
All right. They're putting something together.
I'm going to go with SMU. They are putting together a realistic case for them to get into the ACC championship. Like it's time to take this team seriously as an ACC contender. It is. Yeah. They have the third highest odds according to FanDuel now. Like this is, and they're getting better every week. Switching to Kevin Jennings at quarterback was the best thing they could have ever done. That looks completely different decision. And their schedule looks very favorable ahead. I think that the grass is green here in Dallas for SMU. So caps off to the Mustangs this week for doing a great job.
Love it.
Well, hey, thank you for the time as always, Luke. This is a fantastic episode as always.
It was very.
We had to swallow a big pill with we're talking about Alabama, but it is what it is. It's what we do on here. But thanks, brother. It was a great time as always, and we should be back here next week. I'll keep you updated about the week. We should be back here next week.
Yep. Sometimes it's better to talk it out.
It is. That's the best therapy. Sometimes is just laying it all out there.
That's right. All right.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.